Hey everyone, thank you for your support. I noticed a lot of you who are watching and enjoying the content aren't subscribed yet. If you love spine-chilling stories, creepy encounters, and unexplained mysteries, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. It really helps the channel grow and helps us keep bringing you more of the content you love. And be sure to comment down below where you are tuning in from. I re-downloaded Tinder again. I had deleted it a few months back after a string of truly awful dates, but figured maybe my luck would finally change. I swiped mindlessly for a bit until a familiar face popped up that made me stop in my tracks. My heart skipped a beat when I saw it was my ex-girlfriend Katie. There was no mistaking that smile, those bright blue eyes, the cute freckle on her left cheek. It was the exact same profile picture she had used when we were together. I couldn't believe it. We had broken up over a year ago, and she moved across the country to California for a new job. What were the chances she moved back to our hometown without telling me? My cursor hovered over her profile, wondering if I should swipe right. Katie and I didn't exactly have an amicable breakup. I wanted to try long distance, but she refused, insisting it would change the dynamic of our relationship. Her new job was a dream opportunity, so I didn't want to hold her back. But maybe this was fate giving us a second chance. Before I could overthink it too much, I impulsively swiped right and got the "it's a match" notification seconds later. My mind raced trying to think of the perfect opening line. I finally settled on asking how her fancy new job was going in California, figuring that was a safe conversation starter. Her response wasn't quite what I expected. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've lived here my whole life," she wrote back simply. Strange, I thought. Maybe she got a new job locally instead of moving. When I asked for clarification, she said, "You must have me confused with someone else." Now I was really puzzled. This was definitely Katie. She looked identical to her old pictures. Why was she being coy about our past relationship? I tried asking light questions about where she went to high school and other hometown memories we shared, but she skillfully evaded or deflected each one. Her responses were courteous but vague, never revealing anything substantial. She claimed to have grown up in our city, but couldn't name any specific places or people when I probed further. Eventually, I point-blank asked if she used to date me. "Sorry, I think you have the wrong person," was all she wrote back. I was starting to get frustrated and honestly a little disturbed. Was this some kind of weird mind game? Or did she really not remember me at all? The only logical explanation was that something traumatic happened, causing her to block out huge chunks of memory. But how would that explain recreating her old Tinder profile perfectly? Her photos, bio, everything was exactly the same as I recalled. Either Katie was messing with me or this person was literally her doppelganger. In a last-ditch effort, I asked Katie to meet up so we could figure this out in person. She ignored my request at first, but I kept pushing for answers. Finally, she agreed to meet at a coffee shop across town the next evening. I spent the next 24 hours trying to prep what I would say to jog her memory. I pulled out old photos of us together, sappy love notes she had written me, even a shirt of mine she used to sleep in. I wasn't letting her get away with pretending not to know me this time. She owed me some answers, even if the truth was hard to hear. The next night I arrived early and grabbed a table by the window so I could watch for her arrival. Every girl that walked in made my heart stop, wondering if it could be Katie. But the minutes ticked by and eventually it was 30 minutes past the time we were supposed to meet. I texted asking if she was running late, but got no response. I waited another agonizing 20 minutes before I had to face the facts. She wasn't showing up. My sadness quickly turned to frustration. This wasn't like the Katie I knew at all. Even if she had forgotten me, she wasn't the type to just stand someone up without a word. I had to get to the bottom of this. On the drive back home, I resolved to stop by her old house that we used to share before she moved. Maybe seeing some of her old belongings would jog my own memory and put this confusing reunion in perspective. I pulled up to the small blue house and felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me. All the lights were off, so I walked around to the backyard. Peering in the window, nothing looked familiar. The furniture was all different now. Just then, my foot bumped something in the grass. I looked down to see a cell phone laying on the ground. Picking it up, the lock screen wallpaper made my heart drop. It was a selfie of Katie and I from years ago that I remember taking. This was her old phone. It still had a big crack in it from when she dropped it at a party. But why was it just abandoned in the backyard? My hands shook as I pressed the home button, not even sure what I hoped to find. The screen opened to Tinder, still logged into her account. That's when it hit me. Someone must have stolen this old phone and was using it to recreate her profile. Who knows how they got her other photos and personal details, but it clearly wasn't actually Katie I had been messaging. She likely had no idea any of this was happening. I felt violated on Katie's behalf knowing someone was impersonating her online. I reported the account to Tinder immediately, hoping they could track down whoever was behind this sick prank. Tossing the phone back in the grass, I walked away from that house even more confused than when I arrived. I still missed the real Katie, even after all this time, but this bizarre encounter made me realize maybe some chapters are better left closed. Driving home, I grappled with whether I should try to contact the real Katie to warn her. But we hadn't spoken in over a year and our last conversation was painful. In the end, I decided it wasn't my place to insert myself into her new life. I'd have to trust that she would see through the deception if this person ever reached out to her. Exhausted by the emotional roller coaster, I plopped into bed and stared at the ceiling. I replayed memories of my time with Katie. Our 3 years together flickered through my mind like an old movie reel. The happiness, the passion, the inevitable cracks in the foundation. As much as it stung, in hindsight our split was probably for the best. We wanted different things. Still, she was an important part of my journey. I'll always cherish the memories we made. But this bizarre catfishing encounter made me realize maybe some chapters are better left closed. Enough time had been wasted chasing ghosts from my past. It was time to look ahead to the future, and maybe one day I'd find someone new when the time was right. But for now, I had to let go of the tantalizing idea that Katie and I were meant to reconnect. As much as it stung, that ship had sailed long ago, and nothing could bring it back. At least now I had some closure after this strange detour. Time to swim forward down the river of life and see where the tides take me next. I had been using Hinge for a few months after getting out of a long-term relationship that ended really badly. My ex, Amanda, had become overly possessive and controlling towards the end of our 3-year relationship, and I was looking forward to moving on and meeting new people. One day, I came across a profile that caught my attention right away. The woman in the pictures looked strangely familiar, even though I was sure we had never met before. As I read through her profile, I realized with a shock that it was nearly identical to Amanda's old Hinge profile, the same cute photos showing her playing with her dog, baking cupcakes, and posing in front of a mountain landscape. The short bio describing her love of hiking, affinity for horror films, and hometown in Denver matched my ex exactly. At first, I thought it must be some kind of weird coincidence. Maybe this woman just happened to closely resemble Amanda and shared a lot of the same interests and background. I decided to message her and get to know her better. As we started chatting, things got progressively more unsettling. She made references to inside jokes I had shared with Amanda, asked about my family members by name, and mentioned specific details about places we had visited together, trips that I had never discussed with anyone else. With a growing sense of unease, I asked her bluntly if she was my ex or knew her in some way. Her tone suddenly shifted, becoming cold and hostile. "I know everything about you and what you've been up to since we broke up," she wrote. "Did you really think you could just move on and I wouldn't find out?" My heart dropped into my stomach. This wasn't just someone who resembled Amanda. This was her, taunting me under a fake identity. She must have created this profile just to spy on me and the new life I was trying to build without her. I immediately reported and blocked the account, but over the next few weeks, I became paranoid that Amanda was still watching me through Hinge. Every match felt like it could potentially be another fake account she had set up to manipulate me. I scrutinized every picture and profile description, looking for similarities to my ex. When I matched with an attractive, friendly girl named Jess, who seemed completely normal, I grilled her with questions designed to prove she wasn't actually my obsessive ex in disguise. She was understandably put off by my suspicious interrogation about her background and family history. I realized then that I was letting Amanda's toxic behavior prevent me from connecting genuinely with new people. Eventually, I decided to delete my Hinge profile entirely and take a break from dating apps. I needed time to regain my sense of security and trust before putting myself out there again. Although I had changed my number and blocked Amanda on all social media platforms we had ever shared, the Hinge incident showed she was still finding ways to infiltrate my life. After a few months of focusing on myself, my own interests, and spending time with close friends, I felt more stable and optimistic. When I re-downloaded Hinge, I was cautious at first, keeping a watchful eye out for anything resembling my ex. But as time passed without any sign of Amanda's trickery, I became more confident that she had given up this disturbing catfishing game. Or so I thought. After a few good first dates with girls from the app, I matched with a very attractive woman named Samantha. She had flowing red hair, a radiant smile, and a bubbly personality that drew me in quickly. We really hit it off and exchanged several long messages a day. After a week, we exchanged numbers and started texting frequently outside of Hinge. Samantha was funny, smart, and seemed genuinely interested in me as a person. Then one Saturday night, after flirting over text all day, I asked Samantha if she would like to meet up for a drink sometime soon. Her tone suddenly changed. The quick, enthusiastic responses came to a halt. An hour later, a new message came through. "I can't believe you really think you could replace me." The blood drained from my face. This wasn't just a coincidence or mix-up. I knew then without a doubt that this was Amanda posing as someone else. She had catfished me again in an elaborate scheme to gain my trust and affection. I felt violated and disgusted that she would go so far just to manipulate me. I immediately blocked the new number, but I was also angry with myself for falling for her act, once again letting her deceive me and poison what could have developed into a real relationship. Over the next month, I became hyper-vigilant, scrutinizing even the smallest details of the women I matched with on Hinge. I searched their names, looked for duplicate images that could be fake. While none of them turned out to be Amanda, I could tell my suspicions were hindering any chance of forming genuine connections. Finally, I decided enough was enough. Amanda had already taken so much from me in our past relationship, and I refused to hand over control of my dating life to her too. So I tried a different tactic. I deleted Hinge once again and signed up for a new app called Inner Circle that had an extensive multi-step screening process. Each user had to get approved through background checks before joining. It was a drastic measure, but it worked. The extensive verification helped ease my anxieties about being fooled again. And after matching with Andrea, who passed the extensive screening process, we hit it off immediately and have been dating seriously for several months now. I still have my guard up in the back of my mind, worried Amanda may find another way back in, but I'm trying not to let that paranoia and fear hold me back anymore. Andrea has been patient and understanding about the situation with my ex, helping me work through lingering doubts and rebuild trust in relationships. I finally feel ready to close the door on my toxic past and look ahead to a much happier future. I used to think those creepy dating stories were made up for attention, until I became one. It started last month when my friend Mark wouldn't stop bugging me about being single. He kept going on about his wife's friend, who was just my type. After 3 weeks of constant nagging, I caved in. The restaurant was this mid-range Italian place downtown. Nothing fancy but nice enough for a first date. I got there early, fidgeting with my napkin and checking my watch every few minutes. When Sarah walked in, she looked exactly like the photo Mark had shown me. Long dark hair, well-dressed, attractive. But something about her eyes made me uncomfortable. They were too intense, like she was scanning me, processing every detail. During dinner, I noticed weird things. She mentioned specific details about my life that I hadn't shared. She knew I'd switched from Life Fitness to Planet Fitness last month. She brought up my recent promotion at work. She even knew about my sister's new baby in Colorado. I tried to brush it off, thinking Mark and his wife must have told her, but the knot in my stomach kept growing. The real red flag came when she casually mentioned Max, my childhood golden retriever. I'd never posted about him online, and even Mark didn't know about Max. He was from before we met. When I asked how she knew, she just smiled and changed the subject. I made up an excuse about an early meeting and practically ran to my car. That night, my phone started blowing up. Messages from different numbers, all saying similar things. Had such a great time. Can't wait to see you again. You look cute when you're nervous. I blocked each number, but new ones kept coming. Then they got darker. You can't hide from me. We belong together. I'm always watching. By morning, my social media was flooded with follow requests from accounts I didn't recognize. Each profile picture was just slightly out of focus, but I could tell they were all her. I set everything to private and deleted my dating profiles. 3 days after the date, I was at work when my coworker asked who my girlfriend was. Apparently, she'd been standing outside our building for hours, just staring up at my window. I'm on the 12th floor, but somehow she knew exactly where my desk was. Security went to check, but she vanished before they got there. The gym incident really shook me. I was on the treadmill when she appeared out of nowhere, taking the machine right next to me. She acted like it was completely normal, like we planned to meet there. I never told her which gym I went to. I left my workout mid-session, but when I got to my car, she was already in the parking lot, waving at me from her car. Things escalated when she showed up at my parents' house. They lived 2 hours away in a small town, and I'd never mentioned them during our date. She told my mom we were engaged and started sharing detailed stories about our relationship. She knew about my dad's heart surgery last year and my mom's garden club meetings. When my mom called me, confused and concerned, I felt my blood run cold. I started staying at different friends' houses, never telling anyone where I'd be. But somehow she always found me. Every morning, I'd wake up to messages describing what I'd done the day before, what I was wearing, who I talked to. She knew when I skipped lunch, when I took different routes to work, even when I bought new clothes. The photos started arriving next. Me getting coffee, me at my desk, me asleep at my bed, all taken without my knowledge. Some were clearly shot through my windows, others seemed taken inside my apartment. I changed my locks 3 times, installed security cameras, but nothing helped. She was always one step ahead. When I went to the police, they said they needed more evidence. Then I found a USB drive on my kitchen counter in my locked apartment. It contained hundreds of photos of me going back months before our date. There were videos too, recorded conversations I'd had in my own home. The police finally took it seriously. I did some research and discovered her real identity. Her name wasn't Sarah, it was Rebecca Thorne. She'd done this before to other men in nearby cities. Same pattern. One date, then months of stalking. Some had to move across the country to escape her. Last week, I finally got a restraining order, but it made no difference. Notes kept appearing in my apartment. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. You can't hide forever. We're meant to be together. The worst revelation came yesterday. I was talking to Mark about the whole situation, and he looked confused. He said he'd never set me up on a date. His wife didn't know any Sarah or Rebecca. The number that had texted me pretending to be Mark's wife was fake. The entire setup had been orchestrated by her. I'm in a hotel room now, throwing everything I own into suitcases. My phone hasn't stopped buzzing with messages from new numbers. The last one just came through. Your room has a nice view of the parking lot. Blue looks good on you. I ran out and got as far away as possible. Police found my hotel room empty that night. My suitcases were still there, half packed, but I was gone. What they didn't find was any sign of struggle or forced entry. The security cameras in the hallway mysteriously stopped working for exactly 7 minutes. 3 days later, my car was discovered in a shopping center parking lot 2 states away. The only thing inside was a Polaroid photo of me and Sarah. No, Rebecca, smiling together at what looked like a cabin, on the back, in neat handwriting. Finally together. I'm writing this now from somewhere I can't disclose. I managed to escape that night at the hotel, but barely. I saw her coming down the hallway as I was taking out the trash. Pure luck. I ran down the emergency stairs and didn't stop running until I was far away. The police are still looking for Rebecca Thorne, but she's good at disappearing. They found evidence linking her to 5 other missing men across 3 states. All of them started with a blind date. I'm safer now, but I still check over my shoulder everywhere I go. Because the truth is, I don't think she's given up. Sometimes, when my phone buzzes with an unknown number, I wonder if she's still watching. I still remember that sunny Saturday when I met Mark for coffee. We had matched on a dating app and he seemed nice enough in our messages. He was cute in his photos, with warm brown eyes and dimpled cheeks when he smiled. At the coffee shop, we hit it off right away. The conversation flowed easily as we discovered we had similar tastes in music, movies, and hobbies. After an hour or so, we parted ways with a friendly hug. When Mark asked if he could see me again, I hesitated. I wasn't feeling that spark, so I politely told him I'd had a nice time, but didn't think we were a romantic match. He looked disappointed, but said he understood and wished me well. I left feeling like it had been an overall good first date, even if we weren't right for each other. The next day, I headed downtown to run some errands. As I was waiting to cross the street, I noticed a man standing a few feet away. He looked familiar. When he turned, I realized with a start it was Mark. Taken aback, I gave an awkward wave. "Hey, funny seeing you here," I said, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, what a coincidence," Mark replied with a smile. The light changed and I hurried across the street, unsettled by the unplanned encounter. I tried to shrug it off, but over the next week, I kept seeing Mark everywhere. He'd be in line behind me at the grocery store, or passing me on the sidewalk as I walked to work. Once, I spotted him sitting alone 2 tables away at my favorite cafe. Each time, he'd give me that same smile and a little wave. My discomfort grew. The final straw came when I saw him waiting outside my office building one evening as I left work. I walked up to him, my unease turning to anger. "Are you following me?" I demanded. "This can't be a coincidence anymore." Mark's smile faded. No, it's not like that," he insisted. "It's just fate bringing us together. Don't you see? We're meant to be." His earnest expression chilled me. I told him bluntly there was no meant to be. We barely knew each other. I asked him to please leave me alone and stop showing up places I frequented. For a moment, his face darkened, but he quickly composed himself. "I understand," he said smoothly. "I just can't give up hope on us, but I'll respect your wishes." I watched warily as he walked away down the block. His response unsettled me further. I started taking different routes and changing my usual routines to avoid running into him again. Weeks went by without a sighting and I began to relax. Then one night, getting home late from dinner with a friend, I noticed a car parked across from my apartment. The driver's side was shrouded in shadow, but as I paused under the streetlight, the interior lit up enough for me to see Mark's familiar face watching me from behind the wheel. My heart pounding, I raced upstairs. I pressed the extra deadbolt on my door and sank to the floor, trying to calm my shaking hands. This had gone too far. A man I barely knew was clearly obsessed with me for reasons I didn't understand. The next day, I went to the police and asked what could be done. They said stalking laws meant they couldn't intervene unless he directly threatened me. I felt helpless and afraid in my own home. I realized I would have to take action myself. I needed to find a new place Mark didn't know about. I confided in close friends, gave my workplace security a photo of Mark, and made plans to move as soon as possible. For weeks, I lived on edge, terrified each time I stepped outside that I would find him lying in wait. I hardly slept, jolting awake at every small sound. I stopped going out alone, even in broad daylight. I felt like a prisoner in my own life. Mark continued showing up unexpectedly, lurking across the street, appearing in a grocery aisle, sitting at the back of a cafe. Each time, that friendly smile masking something more sinister beneath the surface. He never made contact or did anything overtly threatening, but his persistent presence was harassment in itself. My friends wanted me to get a restraining order, but the police said I didn't have enough evidence of threatening behavior. Mark was clever enough not to cross a legal line, while still inserting himself into the edges of my life as a constant, unsettling reminder. Living constantly on high alert took a toll on my mental health. I was anxious, sleep-deprived, paranoid. I felt violated and powerless, despite locking myself away inside. I considered changing my name or disappearing off the grid, but I refused to let Mark's harassment rob me completely of my identity and freedom. Finally, after months of stalking, the day came when I was able to pack my belongings into a truck bound for a new city and a fresh start. I only told my closest friend where I was going, not even family members, in case Mark tried to manipulate them into revealing my location. As the truck pulled away, I felt an immense sense of relief. I was reclaiming my life. Still, it took a long time before I stopped glancing over my shoulder everywhere I went, half expecting to see Mark's smiling face. For over a year after my move, every time an unknown number called, a jolt of fear went through me that it might be him. Slowly, the panic attacks and nightmares decreased. But I never regained the open, trusting attitude I'd had before. I was worrier, more guarded with strangers. I hated that Mark had instilled that lasting wariness in me. For a long time, I avoided dating, fearful of encountering another predator behind a nice facade. Even now, years later, remnants of the stigma and shame resurface whenever I share my stalking story. Mark's harassment changed me at a core level. That sunny coffee date haunts me still, a reminder that you truly never know what darkness someone hides behind an appealing exterior. I often wonder if he's still out there searching for me, convinced we're fated to be together no matter how desperately I try to break free. I was so excited for my first date with Jake. We'd been chatting online for weeks, and he seemed like such a great guy. Smart, funny, and super cute in his photos. We talked about everything from our favorite movies to travel destinations and what we wanted out of life. He seemed to have all the qualities I was looking for. After so many amazing conversations, we finally agreed to meet at a trendy new restaurant downtown. The date started off amazing. Jake was even more charming in person. His smile was genuine, his laugh infectious, and his energy completely captivating. We laughed and talked for hours over dinner and drinks. It felt so easy, like we'd known each other for years, and there was no awkwardness at all. We shared stories about our childhoods, our families, and what we'd been through in life. I couldn't believe how quickly the time passed. Every minute felt like it was flying by, and before I knew it, it was nearly midnight. I was having such a great time that I didn't want the night to end. Jake offered to drive me home since I'd taken an Uber there. I was relieved and excited that the night wasn't over yet. I happily accepted, not wanting to say goodbye to the incredible connection we made. The car ride was lighthearted at first, and we continued chatting about silly things, laughing and enjoying each other's company. But then, as we turned onto a quiet side street, Jake suggested we take a scenic detour to show me a cool spot he knew of. I was so caught up in the good vibes of the night that I didn't think twice and agreed without hesitation. At first, we were just driving through quieter residential streets, nothing too out of the ordinary. But soon the houses became more sparse and the streetlights fewer and farther between. The air felt heavier, and I could see the dark silhouettes of trees stretching on both sides of the road. An uneasy feeling started to creep in. Something about the surroundings felt off. The streetlights were almost non-existent, and the buildings had completely disappeared. It felt like we were leaving the city altogether. I casually asked how much further this place was, trying to keep my tone light. Jake mumbled something vague about it being just up ahead. His voice, once warm and inviting, now seemed distant, almost robotic. It was as if something had changed in him. I glanced around, noticing the houses were now completely gone, replaced by thick, dark woods on both sides of the road. The trees seemed to press in closer, and the road was winding and narrow. No other cars were in sight. My heart started racing. This didn't feel right at all. I tried to stay calm and told Jake I was getting tired and asked if we could turn around and head back. He didn't respond, just sped up a little instead, and my stomach twisted into knots. Panic set in as I realized the gravity of the situation. I didn't really know this guy at all. Sure, we had chatted online for weeks, but that didn't mean I knew anything about him in reality. What had I gotten myself into? My mind raced with every worst-case scenario. Should I try to grab the wheel and steer the car off the road? Should I try to jump out and run? But I had no idea where we were, how to get help, or even which direction to go in. I noticed Jake kept glancing nervously in the rearview mirror, his eyes flickering to it almost obsessively. Was he worried someone was following us? Or was he looking to make sure no one could see what he was about to do to me? My imagination ran wild, spinning horrible thoughts in my head. I felt trapped, completely helpless. Suddenly, I remembered the pepper spray keychain in my purse. I kept it for self-defense, never really thinking I'd need it, but now, it seemed like my only chance. If I could get my hands on it without Jake noticing, maybe I could protect myself. I casually reached down to my purse on the floor, trying to stay as nonchalant as possible. My fingers trembled as I searched for the small canister, praying I wouldn't make any noise or give myself away. Jake's eyes were fixed on the road ahead. The car was moving faster now, the tires squealing as he took sharp turns, the sound of the engine humming louder. My heart was racing, and I gripped the pepper spray tightly, my thumb poised on the trigger. I had to time it perfectly. The next moment could be my only chance to escape. Then, without warning, Jake slammed on the brakes. The car lurched forward, and we screeched to a stop in a small clearing. This was my chance. Before Jake could react, I whipped the door open and sprang out of the car. I didn't look back. I ran as fast as I could into the woods, my feet pounding the ground, my lungs gasping for air. Branches whipped against my face, and my legs ached as I pushed myself harder, blindly sprinting through the darkness. I could hear Jake yelling behind me, his footsteps crashing through the underbrush as he chased after me. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, and I pushed myself harder, willing my legs to move faster. Every time I thought I might stop, the sound of his voice and the fear that was consuming me drove me forward. After what felt like hours, I finally saw a faint glow of lights in the distance. I dared to hope. I broke through the trees and onto a main road, my eyes frantically scanning for help. A gas station sign flickered ahead, its fluorescent lights shining like a beacon of hope. I ran straight for the door, bursting through it, my chest heaving with sobs. The startled clerk looked at me in confusion, and I begged him to call the police, unable to stop shaking as I explained what had just happened. The next few hours were a blur. Police took my statement, and I was examined at the hospital. Luckily, I was physically okay, just some cuts and bruises from running through the woods, but the emotional scars would take much longer to heal. I couldn't shake the feeling of what might have happened if I hadn't acted when I did. They never caught Jake. His online profile was fake, and the car he'd been driving was stolen. The police said I was lucky to have escaped, but I couldn't stop torturing myself with the what-ifs. What if I hadn't been so trusting? What if I hadn't gone on that date in the first place? I kept asking myself how I could have been so naive. Months have passed now, but I still have nightmares about that night. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to work through the trauma and learn to trust again, but it's a slow process. I'm much more cautious now, and I always carried pepper spray with me, just in case. I don't date online anymore. It feels too dangerous, too unknown. I know not every first date turns into a nightmare, and I'm sure many people have positive experiences, but I hope sharing my story will remind others to be extra cautious. Trust your instincts, have an exit plan, and always let someone close to you know where you're going. It's better to seem paranoid than to risk your safety. Looking back, there were red flags I ignored. Jake was a little too perfect online. He pushed to meet in person much too quickly, and during our date, he pressured me to drink more than I was comfortable with. I should have listened to that little voice telling me something was off, but I convinced myself that everything was fine. I'm still regaining my confidence and learning to trust myself again, but I'll never forget how quickly a dream date turned into a nightmare. I'm grateful that I made it out alive to tell my story and to hopefully help others stay safe. It started out like any other Tinder match. I swiped right on a cute brunette named Emily who seemed normal enough at first glance. Her profile was pretty sparse, just a few hiking photos and a brief bio saying she enjoyed the outdoors. I figured why not take a chance and send her a message. To my surprise, she wrote back fairly quickly, but her responses were short, just a word or two at a time. I tried to keep the conversation going, asking about her job and interests, but she always steered it back to how much she liked hiking and hanging out in nature. Red flag number one probably should have been how evasive she was about meeting up. I suggested drinks or dinner a few times, but she always had an excuse ready about being too busy with work. After about 2 weeks of brief, stilted messaging back and forth, She finally suggested meeting up for a hike on a nearby trail. I was caught a bit off guard since it was nearly midnight by then, but she insisted it was the only time that week she had free. Against my better judgment, I agreed to the late-night hiking expedition. The day of our hike, Emily instructed me to meet her at midnight in the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse. This should have been major red flag number 2, but I was young and naive and still hoping for a fun outdoorsy date. I drove out to the deserted industrial park at the appointed time and pulled into the weed-choked parking lot. The whole area was pitch black and deathly silent. Apprehension started creeping up my spine as the minutes ticked by with no sign of Emily. I messaged her to say I had arrived, but got no response. After nearly an hour of waiting alone in the dark, I attempted to look up her profile again, only to find it had completely vanished. No trace of our conversations, her photos, or cutesy bio remained. I drove home rattled and confused, unsure if I had been pranked or ghosted. For several days after, I tried to put the bizarre night out of my mind. Then late one evening, as I was scrolling absent-mindedly through Tinder, a familiar face popped up. It was Emily's main hiking photo, but the name on the profile was different. Out of morbid curiosity, I swiped right and matched with her immediately. My message inquiring if she was the same Emily went unanswered. I became obsessed with figuring out who this mysterious woman was. Through my amateur online sleuthing, I uncovered a news article about a young woman named Emily who had been murdered at that very warehouse 5 years prior. The crime was still unsolved, but evidence pointed to an online dating encounter gone horribly wrong. Several other men had also reported matching with Emily only to have her direct them to the abandoned building, but no one else had shown up the nights they were lured there. It all became clear that I had encountered Emily's lonely, restless spirit still trying to make connections on Tinder. My skin crawls imagining what fate could have befallen me had I crossed paths with her killer that night. To this day, Emily's profile intermittently surfaces on the app, always with different names attached. Her hiking pictures remain unchanged, tied to her eternal memory of happier times in life. Wary men still obediently travel to the ominous warehouse to fulfill her ominous requests, never knowing how close they come to a sinister end. As for me, the night's events left a permanent mark. I deleted my Tinder account and swore off online dating for good. My brush with the phantom profile was enough to warn me away from the dangers lurking behind virtual companions. Some connections are better left in the past, resting in peace. Or so I thought. A year later, loneliness drove me back to online dating against my better judgment. After a few failed matches, I decided to give Tinder another shot. Swiping through the endless faces one night, I nearly dropped my phone when Emily appeared once more. An icy shudder ran through me seeing those familiar hiking photos. Though I knew better, I swiped right again, morbidly hoping to get answers about her identity. To my disbelief, we instantly matched for the second time. Before I could even formulate a message, an address popped up from her account along with instructions to meet there tonight at 9 p.m. My curiosity battled with my caution, but in the end curiosity won out. I had to know who this person truly was and what she wanted from me. Armed with my phone's GPS, I drove to the mystery address, which turned out to be a small house on the edge of town. The windows were dark inside, and no cars sat in the overgrown driveway. Apprehension flooded me, and I considered turning back, but couldn't stop now when I was so close to unraveling the truth. I approached the creaking front porch and hesitantly knocked on the weathered door. Several agonizing minutes passed in silence. I had just convinced myself no one was home when the doorknob slowly turned. The door opened a crack, revealing a sliver of a gaunt, pale face I instantly recognized. Emily stood before me just as in her pictures, hollow-eyed with stringy brown hair. Before I could react, she grasped my wrist with an icy cold hand and yanked me inside. The interior of the house was in shambles, covered in layers of dust and cobwebs. Emily stared at me intently before finally speaking in a paper-thin rasp. "I've been waiting for you. The others never came. But you returned." Confused and terrified, I stammered, "What do you want from me?" A chilling smile contorted Emily's sunken face. "Simply your company. It's so lonely here, you see. Won't you stay a while?" The adrenaline coursed through my veins as I broke away from her grip and fled outside. I sprinted to my car and peeled out down the overgrown driveway. In the rearview mirror, Emily's emaciated figure stood watching me from the porch, still wearing that knife-sharp smile. I drove home in shock, with the certainty that I had come face to face with something unnatural and sinister. These days I avoid Tinder and all online dating sites, too rattled by my repeat brushes with the entity claiming to be Emily. I still catch myself compulsively checking for her profile, both hoping and dreading that I'll see those familiar pictures surface again. Wherever she manifests from and whatever she truly wants, I know better now than to swipe right on the phantom. Some connections should remain buried in the past, no matter how alluring their lure. For in the harsh light of day, our virtual companions may reveal themselves as something far more sinister than we ever imagined. It started out innocently enough. I was new to online dating and decided to give Hinge a try after hearing good things from friends. As a 28-year-old single woman living in the city, meeting people organically was proving difficult between my busy work schedule and established friend circles. Hinge seemed like a nice middle ground between more casual apps and serious matchmaking sites. After setting up my profile, I was pleased to start getting matches right away. Maintaining conversations was hit or miss, but it was fun meeting new people. One of my early matches was a guy named John. He was attractive enough and we seemed to have a few things in common. We exchanged some messages about favorite foods and hobbies before the conversation fizzled out. No big deal, I figured, as I moved on to other matches. A few days later, I saw John's face appear again as a match. I thought it was odd since I was pretty sure we had a match after our last exchange. But hey, maybe I was mistaken, or perhaps he had deleted then remade his profile. We had hit it off decently, so I decided to give it another chance. This time the conversation died off even quicker. Once again, I was sure to unmatch John before proceeding with my search. Over the next week, John proceeded to appear as a match no less than 5 more times. Each time I would immediately unmatch and block him, yet his profile kept resurfacing as though it was brand new. It was bizarre and concerning. The photos were always the same ones of John rock climbing or out at trendy bars. Didn't this guy have anything else going on in his life? After the latest reappearance, I decided to message John before unmatching again. I asked him point blank why he kept making new profiles after I had blocked him. To my disbelief, he claimed to have no idea what I was talking about. According to him, this was his only Hinge profile and the app just kept suggesting me as a match for some reason. I told him that was impossible and to please stop remaking profiles of me. John swore up and down that he wasn't and suggested I complain to Hinge if I really had that big of an issue with their highly compatible algorithm. His gaslighting only freaked me out more. It was clear John was deliberately making duplicate accounts, but he refused to admit it. I reported his profile to Hinge for harassment before doing one final unmatch and block. However, I knew it was probably futile. Sure enough, 2 days later I opened Hinge to see those hauntingly familiar eyes peering out from a brand new profile. This time the backgrounds of his photos were slightly different, but everything else was exactly the same. Against my better judgment, I engaged with him again and demanded an explanation. John feigned confusion once more and said he didn't know why Hinge's system kept pushing us together. According to him, maybe it was a sign we should meet up in person. That was the last straw for me. I immediately deleted my Hinge account altogether, hoping that would be the end of my nightmare. For a few weeks, life went on as normal. I was extra vigilant whenever out in public by myself, but there were no signs of John. Eventually, I started to relax and think the ordeal was finally over. That sense of relief came crashing down when I received an odd email one night. The sender was unfamiliar, but they somehow knew my name and asked how my recent trip to the art museum had been. I froze. I had just visited there over the weekend and posted a few photos online. The sender went on to say they had seen my pics and thought the Impressionist collection looked amazing there. How had a random person seen these photos I had only shared with close friends? It slowly dawned on me that it could be none other than John. While I had deleted my Hinge account, he was clearly still keeping tabs on me online and knew details about my personal life. I never responded to the email and made all my social media private after that. For weeks, I was constantly looking over my shoulder anytime I went out. Presumably, John still lived in the area if Hinge had initially suggested us, so I feared running into him. Weeks turned into months with no further contact from John. Eventually, my paranoia began to subside, though I remained vigilant about my online presence. Then out of the blue, I got a notification about a new follower on Instagram. It was an account with no post, but the profile picture was unmistakably John staring back at me. The username was a string of random numbers. My block list was at max capacity, so I couldn't block the account. Within minutes, a message popped up from the same account. "Hey, long time no see." My hands shaking, I immediately deleted my Instagram account and removed all public traces of myself online. I still don't know how John continually finds me, but it's clear he's created countless fake accounts across different platforms for the sole purpose of following my digital footprint. It's been 6 months now without any contact, but I still constantly brace for the day his face emerges again from the void. No matter what I do, I can't shake the visceral fear that he's out there lurking and waiting to reconnect. I decided to move to a new city across the country, hoping the added distance would deter him. For the first few months in my new home, life was peaceful without any signs of John. Just as I was starting to settle in and gain comfort in my fresh start, the familiar nightmare crept up again. I was out grocery shopping when I rounded the corner of an aisle and found myself face to face with those haunting eyes. John stood right in front of me, a sleek grin spreading over his face. "Funny running into you here," he said casually as my body froze in panic. I abandoned my cart and rushed out of the store, my pulse racing. How had he tracked me down so far from home? It confirmed my worst fear. No matter where I went or how many precautions I took, John would keep finding ways to infiltrate my life, both online and in person. I became a recluse after that, refusing to leave my apartment except for work where security was tight. Any social media accounts I made using aliases would inevitably attract follow requests from blank profiles eerily similar to the ones John had created before. My only solace was changing my number and not giving it out to anyone new, but even that felt like just a temporary fix. Sure enough, after a few months my phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number. "No place is too far to find you." My hands trembled as I read John's words over and over. He could get to me whenever he wanted, that much was clear. No police report or restraining order would likely stop him at this point. My life as I knew it was over, unless I could figure out a way to completely disappear off the grid. But could I ever truly escape those haunting eyes? Running was futile. John would always find a way back in. He made that disturbingly clear. In a last-ditch effort, I deleted all traces of my identity and fled to a small town in the middle of nowhere. I cut off contact with everyone from my past life, changed my name and appearance, and got a cash job as a waitress at a local diner. For the first year, I barely slept, constantly expecting John to walk through the door. But as time passed with no sign of him, I slowly began to relax into my new routine. I made friends with some regulars at the diner and joined a local book club. Though I was always vague about my past, after 2 years in hiding, I finally felt secure enough to open up to Sarah, my closest friend there. That night, there was a knock at my door. My chest tightened in fear as I looked through the peephole. But it wasn't John on the other side. It was Sarah, holding a small cake. "I wanted to surprise you for your birthday," she said with a smile. For the first time in years, I cried tears of joy. Maybe I was finally free. I should have known something was wrong the moment I pulled up to that Victorian house. The porch light flickered like a warning signal, but I ignored it. That's what happens when you're lonely and desperate enough to try online dating. You overlook the red flags. I matched with Violet on Hinge 3 weeks ago. Her profile was carefully crafted, just enough detail to seem genuine without revealing too much. A 25-year-old chef with copper-colored hair and a passion for vintage photography. We spent days messaging back and forth about our shared interests in true crime podcasts and 80s movies. When she suggested cooking dinner at her place, I jumped at the chance. The house sat at the end of a quiet street, partially hidden behind overgrown oak trees. It was larger than I expected, with peeling white paint and dark windows that seemed to watch me as I walked up the cracked pathway. Violet opened the door before I could knock. She looked exactly like her photos, wearing a flour-dusted apron and a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The interior was a mix of modern and vintage, crystal chandeliers hanging above IKEA furniture, antique mirrors reflecting LED lights. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air, but there was something else underneath, musty and metallic. Violet led me to the living room while she finished cooking. Everything seemed normal at first. Family photos on the walls, a stack of cooking magazines, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. That's when I first heard it, a dull thump from somewhere below, like someone dropping a heavy book. Then another, and another. The sound was irregular but persistent. I tried to focus on the classical music playing from hidden speakers, but the thumping kept drawing my attention. It seemed to get louder whenever Violet left the room. Dinner was elaborate, handmade ravioli in a wine sauce that must have taken hours to prepare. Violet kept refilling my wine glass, asking questions about my daily routine, my apartment, my habits. The thumping continued throughout the meal. Sometimes it would stop for a few minutes, making the silence feel heavy and expectant, before starting again with renewed intensity. I excused myself to use the bathroom, following Violet's directions down a narrow hallway. The bathroom door was next to another door, heavy oak with a steel padlock hanging from a reinforced latch. The lock was massive industrial grade, completely out of place in a residential home. It wasn't fully closed. Standing there, I could hear the thumping more clearly. It had a rhythm now, almost like Morse code. My hands moved toward the lock before I could stop myself. The metal was cold, well-oiled, recently used. I glanced back toward the dining room, hearing Violet cleaning up dishes. My heart was pounding as I slowly lifted the lock. The basement stairs creaked despite my careful steps. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, illuminating a finished basement that had been converted into some kind of workspace. A professional camera sat on a tripod. Developing trays lined metal shelves. But it was the back room that made my blood run cold. Every inch of wall space was covered with photographs, recent ones on top, me leaving my apartment that morning, getting coffee yesterday, working out last week. Older ones underneath, yellowing at the edges, showing moments from months or even years ago. Me sleeping through my bedroom window, me checking mail, me talking on the phone in places I couldn't even remember being. Each photo was dated, labeled, cataloged with clinical precision. A fresh thump made me jump. It came from behind a door at the far end of the room, hidden behind a stack of photo albums. I took one step toward it, then heard Violet's footsteps above. I ran back upstairs, forcing myself to close the basement door quietly and replace the lock with trembling fingers. My mouth was dry as I made excuses about a work emergency. Violet's smile never wavered as she walked me to the door. She even packed leftover ravioli in a container, acting disappointed but not surprised by my sudden departure. As I drove away, I saw her watching from an upstairs window. The police found nothing when they investigated. The basement was empty except for old boxes and cleaning supplies. No photos, no camera equipment, no evidence of anyone living there. The elderly couple who owned the house said they'd been renting to a young woman, but her references and background check turned out to be elaborate fakes. Violet disappeared completely. Her dating profile vanished. The photos she'd sent me wouldn't load anymore. Sometimes I wonder if I imagined the whole thing, but then I'll catch a glimpse of copper hair in a crowd or hear footsteps behind me when I'm walking alone. And I know she's still out there, still watching, still collecting moments of my life I never knew were being stolen. I never thought I'd end up in a cult. That's not the kind of thing you expect when you're just trying to meet someone nice for a date. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and boy, did I get a doozy. It all started when I matched with this guy, Luke, on a dating app. His profile looked great. Handsome, into meditation and spirituality, works as a life coach. We chatted for a bit, and he seemed really sweet and genuine. When he suggested meeting up for our first date at a weekend meditation retreat, I was intrigued. I'd always wanted to try something like that, and it seemed like a unique first date idea. The day of the retreat arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves and excitement. I packed an overnight bag and drove out to this remote property in the countryside. It was beautiful, all rolling hills and forests. The main building was this big old farmhouse that had been converted into a retreat center. Luke was there to greet me when I arrived. He gave me a warm hug and helped me with my bag. There were about 20 other people there for the retreat. Everyone seemed friendly enough, if a bit intense. They all wore these plain white outfits that Luke said were traditional meditation clothes. He gave me a set to change into. The first few hours weren't too bad. We did some guided meditations and breathing exercises. It was actually pretty relaxing. But then things started to get weird. The group leader, this guy they called the teacher, gave a long rambling speech about finding your true self and breaking free from society's brainwashing. He kept talking about how we were all chosen and special. I started to get an uneasy feeling in my stomach. I glanced over at Luke, hoping to catch his eye, but he was staring raptly at the teacher with this glassy-eyed expression. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just some New Age retreat. It was a cult. My mind started racing, trying to figure out what to do. I wanted to just grab my stuff and bolt, but I was afraid of causing a scene. Plus, we were in the middle of nowhere. I didn't even know exactly where we were located. As the day went on, it only got worse. There were more speeches about letting go of your old life and devoting yourself to the work. They kept us constantly busy with activities and rituals. I realized they were using sleep deprivation and sensory overload tactics to wear us down. Luke stuck close to me the whole time, always touching my arm or putting his hand on my back. At first, I thought he was being sweet, but I began to realize he was actually hurting me, making sure I didn't wander off or talk to anyone else alone. That night, we'd all slept in this big dormitory room. I lay awake for hours, my mind whirling. How had I gotten myself into this? How was I going to get out? I kept remembering stories I'd read about people who joined cults and never escaped. The thought of being trapped here forever made me feel sick. The next morning, I knew I had to act. They were planning to take our phones away that day as part of a digital detox. If that happened, I'd have no way to contact anyone outside. I pretended to be totally into everything, nodding and smiling. When we broke for lunch, I told Luke I wasn't feeling well and asked if I could go lie down for a bit. He seemed concerned but agreed, telling me he'd come check on me soon. As soon as I was alone, I grabbed my phone and ran. I sprinted through the woods, stumbling over roots and branches, my heart pounding. I could hear shouting behind me. They'd realized I was gone. I finally reached the main road and flagged down a passing car. The elderly couple inside looked alarmed at my appearance, wild-eyed, still in those white cult clothes, out of breath. But they let me in when I begged them to help. I called the police from their car and reported everything. They took it seriously, thank goodness. Within a few hours, the whole place was swarming with cops. They shut down the retreat and arrested the leaders. Turns out the whole thing was even worse than I realized. They'd been operating for years, scamming people out of money and keeping them isolated from their families. Luke wasn't just some innocent victim. He was one of their main recruiters, using dating apps to lure in new members. The aftermath was rough. I had to give statements to the police and talk to lawyers. My family and friends were shocked when they found out what happened. I felt so stupid for falling for it all. But mostly, I just felt incredibly lucky that I got out when I did. It's been a few months now, and I'm still processing everything. I've been seeing a therapist to work through it all. I deleted all the dating apps off my phone. I think I'll be taking a break from that scene for a while. Sometimes I still have nightmares about being trapped there, but mostly I'm just grateful. Grateful that I trusted my instincts. Grateful that I found the courage to run. And grateful that I can use my experience to help educate others about the dangers of cults and how they operate. I never expected a first date to turn into a fight for my freedom. But life is full of surprises, both good and bad. All we can do is stay alert, trust our gut, and be ready to run like hell when we need to. It all started when I matched with her on Hinge last month. As the host of a popular true crime podcast, I sometimes get fans messaging me on dating apps. But Ashley seemed different. She was truly invested in discussing my latest case, not just aiming for a date with her favorite podcaster. The case centered around the disappearance of a local woman from my hometown. I was exploring a potential tie to a serial killer active in the area at the time. Ashley latched onto this theory immediately and kept pushing me to investigate further. She referenced details about the case I hadn't even discussed on my show yet. Things only the police or killer could know. I just assumed she was a fellow armchair detective who had done her research. We chatted for hours that first night on Hinge. I was up late scribbling notes about all Ashley's theories and avenues to explore. Her insights felt so promising for the episode I was developing. I decided to suggest meeting up for coffee to talk more. But when I opened Hinge the next morning, Ashley was gone. Her profile had vanished like she was never there at all. I checked my messages, even those were wiped from our history. I racked my brain trying to remember her last name or any identifying details. Nothing. I spent weeks searching for any trace of her. I couldn't find a single photo that matched her profile pictures. Reverse image searches turned up nothing. She wasn't on any other social media I could find. It was like she appeared on Hinge that one night just to feed me information and then disappeared back into the void. I kept digging into the theories Ashley had proposed, feeling almost haunted by her now disembodied voice in my head. The details were so specific, things no podcast listener could realistically piece together. She theorized the killer had used a specific make and model of car, used back roads through a certain neighborhood to avoid detection, and speculated on the motives in a way that matched what police told me, but had never been made public. The further I followed the leads Ashley provided, the more unsettled I became. I couldn't escape the creeping sense that Ashley knew more than she should. That perhaps she wasn't just an armchair detective, but actually had inside knowledge of the crime. Could she be an estranged relative of the killer, someone close trying to indirectly confess, a former girlfriend with a guilty conscience, or even an alternate persona of the killer themselves, taunting me now for entertainment? Without Ashley to explain her bizarre intimacy with the details, the case became downright chilling. My sleep suffered as I lay awake wondering about her true identity and motives. I debated whether to bring my concerns to the police, but I had little to go on, just the paranoia of some messages from a woman who wasn't even real. In the end, I distanced myself from the case for my own sanity. My producer took the reins on the episode we had planned, and I made excuses about pursuing other stories. It was all I could do to stop spiraling. I couldn't stand letting this Ashley, whoever or whatever she was, get any more embedded in my head. Now, months later, the case remains open. No breaks or revelations since my messages with the mystery Hinge woman. Sometimes I still feel her presence, though, urging me to pick up the thread and unravel what she started. A missing woman is still out there, waiting for justice. But in the end, I had to choose my work or my peace of mind. For now, the latter has won out. But I still can't help wondering if I made the right choice, or if I should have kept following where Ashley led me into the darkness. Lately, the case has been weighing on me more than ever. Maybe it's the upcoming one-year anniversary of the woman's disappearance, or knowing the killer is likely still out there while the trail goes cold. I've avoided diving back in, but the pull is getting stronger. Just last week, I found myself driving down the back roads Ashley had mentioned, imagining how the killer might have navigated them unseen. I sat outside the bar the woman was last seen leaving and watched the patrons, wondering if the monster could be among them. It felt good to be doing something again instead of pushing it out of my mind. But the further I get pulled back in, the more I worry that I'm playing right into Ashley's hands, that she's still out there, monitoring my investigation and subtly pushing me where she wants me to go. I know I said I wouldn't let her dictate my actions anymore, but her leads are still the best I've got. She knew the intricate details that someone burying the truth would know. I may not like being her puppet, but if she's my only shot at answers, don't I owe it to the victim to follow through? My producer has been checking in more, concerned about me reopening old wounds, and part of me shares those fears. I still have no idea who or what Ashley really is, or what continuing to engage could unleash. But if she pops up again dangling new clues, could I really turn away? Wouldn't I at least need to know why she's so intimately close to this? For now, I'm taking baby steps, driving those old roads again, digging up my case notes, letting my mind wander to the possibilities, both disturbing and promising. If Ashley returns, I can't say for sure I won't follow her siren call back into the depths. Justice for the dead woman deserves that much. But I need to be cautious, guard my sanity and safety above all. This time, if I do go down the rabbit hole, it will be with eyes wide open. Ashley won't catch me unaware again.